what does nicotine do? Where does nicotine dependence come from and what happens in the body? How long does nicotine stay in the body?
So the easy answer first is when we use nicotine, nicotine is excreted, or the half-life of nicotine is about 2 hours. So this is, it doesn't stay in the body very long, but as it accumulates with people who smoke, they smoke many cigarettes per day, that nicotine does accumulate in the body, but the half-life is about 2 hours, so it does leave our body rather quickly on the order of hours to days. And part of that does lead to, and using nicotine often does lead to a dependence. So our bodies become used to nicotine, become used to the effects that it has, and that changes some of our physiological states. And so when you go off of nicotine, what you have happen when you're using nicotine, such as increased alertness, increased heart rate, increased attention, some of that might actually decrease over time. Another is a change in our reward system in the brain, where nicotine acts on nicotinic receptors in the reward systems of our brain. So another manifestation of dependence is when you go off of nicotine, when you stop using nicotine, you might go through a period of withdrawal where you have not as much reward in your body. You're not getting pleasures from daily things. This is very common when you have a drug that acts on reward and you go off of it. It doesn't last forever. It doesn't last, it lasts on the order of weeks to months depending on the individual who's using the product, or who's using nicotine, but it does happen.
Because you mentioned the brain, I would like to ask you what happens in the brain when we smoke and how does it affect our mental health over time?
So in the brain, what happens when we smoke cigarettes is nicotine binds to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that are present in various areas of our brain, most notably the reward system. So it activates our reward system. It also might activate areas of our brain that process cognition and attention, and it makes us more alert. This is very normal. But also what happens to the brain when we smoke versus just use nicotine is you have cardiovascular effects. So your brain has lots of vascularization to it, lots of blood vessels. This carbon monoxide from the smoke and other HPHCs that are present in the smoke might lead to hardening of those vessels that are present in our brains. So you might become more prone to stroke. You might be more prone to other cardiovascular injuries. And this is also very common, but I want to be clear that is specific to smoking, and we have not seen that happen in response to just nicotine application. So nicotine transdermally and those sorts of things, the cardiovascular effects aren't as pronounced or present at all.
Okay, and last one. Please just mention me what are the top 3 primary diseases caused by smoking?
The top 3 primary diseases caused by smoking are several types of cancer. So the first 2 types of cancer would be lung cancer and then bladder cancer. The other would be cardiovascular disease, and that might that is because of exposure to potentially harmful chemicals and carbon monoxide that leads to hardening of arteries, hardening of blood vessels, leading to cardiovascular disease. And then also respiratory illness from the exposure to smoke. So you have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and other respiratory illnesses that are often exacerbated from smoking.
Is smoking a disease? Why is the process of quitting smoking so challenging? And what are the main tips for smokers looking to quit?
So, smoking, it's a complex process in the sense that there are many factors that can influence why a smoker smokes. Nicotine is clearly an important one. It's one of the main reasons why smokers smoke. There's also the behavioral component, the fact that you associate the ritual with other activities. So the fact remains that even if quitting smoking is possible and definitely is the best way to reduce the risks of smoke-related diseases, it is difficult, and the majority of the smokers continue smoking. This is why it's so important to consider harm reduction approaches as a complementary pillar to prevention and cessation to facilitate, to encourage that those adult smokers who don't quit, they can switch to something that is better.
Thank you. The second one is what happens to the heart when we smoke and how is it affected over time?
So in order to respond that, I think we have to look at what is in a cigarette that is so harmful. We know that smoking is harmful, but what is it? And the primary cause of smoke-related diseases is actually all those toxicants that are present in the smoke of a cigarette. So when a cigarette is lit, the tobacco burns, it generates the smoke, and it's a very complex mixture that contains thousands of chemicals. There's around 100 of them that have been associated, has been classified as toxic, and this is the primary cause of disease. Here you have carcinogens, but then you have substances like, for example, carbon monoxide that are toxic to the heart. So every time you smoke, your body gets exposed to these substances, and this is what is primarily driving the disease. Cigarette smoke also contains nicotine, and nicotine obviously is addictive. It is not risk-free. It's something that somebody that has a heavy cardiovascular disease, for example, they are it's more recommended for them not to use any tobacco nicotine. But the main point I want to make is precisely this: that is, nicotine is not the primary cause of disease. It's all these toxicants in the smoke.
Thank you. And the last one is, what are the effects or symptoms that occur after quitting smoking? And is it true that weight gain occurs? If so, why does it happen?
Okay, so what happens is when you quit smoking, you stop being exposed to all those toxic substances that are present in cigarette smoke. So you're gonna see over time different changes in your body. So in the shorter term, you can have your carboxyhemoglobin levels, they decrease, and you start having better oxygenation in the blood. You can have improvement in less cough, for example, which obviously depends on many factors, but when you quit smoking, these sort of things improve. When you talk about gaining weight, I'm not a physician, but one thing that is clear is when you smoke, because you have these high levels of toxicants that are being, your body is exposed to, and they are being processed and released in your body through the liver, you spend a lot of energy dealing with those toxicants. When you quit smoking, obviously you don't get that exposure to toxicants, so you're gonna require less energy, if you will, to process this. There's also obviously the behavioral aspects, which some people can experience, craves, and that may explain. But as I said, smoking is very multifactorial, and I think in any case, the benefits of quitting are much higher than anything else. And I think that's the most important thing for the smokers to consider.